Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Amplified Nevada Native Youth. We're glad to have you here with us today. We have an amazing guest ahead of you, along with our Creative Native series, where we highlight natives who went to different types of schools other than the basic type of higher education that we always see, just regular colleges. So people who went to trade schools, art schools, just anything that involves just being creative. And so we're glad to have with us today an amazing guest and the guy who's usually behind the scenes. So we're glad to highlight him actually for once. And to introduce myself today, my name is Avery. I'm your host for today, and I'm excited to be here with you. I just graduated from UNR, and I've been your host now for about since August. I don't know how many months that is, but we'll figure it out. But I'd like to introduce my co-host now. So she's another amazing person. But Dina, would you like to introduce yourself really quick?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Thursday night. We're excited to have our guest with us today. He's a great friend and awesome co-worker with us on the Amplified Nevada Native Youth. And I'm Ferdina Dry with the Nevada Department of Education. Back to you, Avery.
So thanks, Dina. Now I'd like to introduce our amazing guest that we have for us today. His name is Kenrick, and he's the one who's behind the scenes, and we wouldn't have Annie without him. And we're very glad to have him with us today as the one who we're actually hosting. So, Kenrick, introduce yourself a little bit, and yeah.
Kowitz kamadum venti vamai to this Patsan Mulik, Kenrick Escalanti American Mulik. I'm Kenrick Escalanti. I'm from the Fort Yuma Quetzal Reservation. My Quetzal name given to me by my elders is Hale. And I'm really happy to be here on Amplify Nevada Native Youth. I've been working with you guys for a long time, helping you guys out, and I'm just excited to, I'm on camera. So hopefully we can, dive into my story and have a good time.
Yeah, thanks again, Kenrick, for coming out. We know this is, if anybody doesn't know, Kenrick is a very busy guy, and he helps out a lot of people, and we're very glad to have him from the East Coast help us out on the West Coast.
Absolutely.
And so to start off the conversation a little bit, I just want to know a little bit about where you're from and what was your community like growing up?
Absolutely. I'm not originally from the East Coast. I'm from the West Coast. I'm from Winter Haven, California, which is a small little town directly linked to Yuma, Arizona. I'm from the desert Southwest. So my reservation where I grew up is right there on the corner of California, Arizona, Mexico borders. I'm from the Fort Yuma Quetzal Indian Reservation. And, I take pride in saying that I am a true Southern Californian. I'm literally Southern California on the desert tip. So yeah, born and raised on the Fort Yuma Quetzal Indian Reservation. We have over 45,000 square feet of reservation land, and we have about 4,000 citizens within our nation.
And you said that's right on the border of California, sort of?
Yeah, it's literally the southern tip of California, Arizona, Mexico.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I've never
So
even, there's so many reservations out there. I have to visit one of these days.
it's actually quite interesting. Our ancestral lands actually start like right near Bullhead. So it like right near Nevada, all the way into Baja, Mexico, and then right back to where we are currently in Winter Haven, California, near Yuma, Arizona.
Mhm.
Yeah, so good to have you, Kenrick, on our show, and also for you to come into our lives. I'm just excited because you're kind of like my salt or my bird singer brother, and we have that in common. Southern Paiute and your location, and all around that area, up into California, to Arizona, to Nevada. Just it's a wonderful traditional and cultural way to be. So thank you for joining us.
No, thank you guys. I mean, I get to feel like I'm home when I'm talking to you two, but I'm way over here in the East Coast, so
Yeah, we're gonna get used to our Pacific time schedule.
it's definitely hard. I tell you what.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if people think about it, our shows are normally at 6 p.m. So Kenrick is up until 10 o'clock on Thursdays helping us out. He's here for all our youth. So
Absolutely.
everyone shoot Kenrick a comment real quick and thank him for being here with us today and always thank him for all the work he does in the Native community. But as we are talking about a little bit of your origin story, where you're from, sort of start from the beginning in high school and any experiences you has had as a student, and even any challenges you had along the way too.
Well, I think like a lot of native students, I mean, I had plenty of challenges growing up as a kid. I mean, I'm no different than any kid who was raised on the res. From playing in the fields. I mean, I used to play like stick ball games out in the fields. And then I used to swim in the ditches. So, I mean, there really isn't nothing different where I grew up. I tried to be as extracurricular as I could. I had that early mindset that if I was going to be able to do anything outside of my reservation, I had to step out of my own comfort zone. So I try to achieve as many extracurricular activities as I can. I mean, I was a part of the local Native American Youth Leadership Group, which was the Strong Hearts Native Society. I was a part of even the Future Farmers of America. I actually give a lot of credit to the FFA and my teacher at the time, because if it wasn't for the Future Farmers of America, I would have not known how to public speak. I would not have known how to prepare myself for a job interview, how to even create a resume. They had many competitions where like they would take me all over California and like put me in these like prep competitions of how to public speak and how to do a job interview. And so they really set me up for success as an adult. And I didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was like a cool way to get out of the house. What, I get to go to Fresno, what, I get to go to Sacramento, okay, cool. um, but as far as challenges go, and I hear it a lot on this show, you get that feeling, that imposter syndrome where you don't feel like you fit in or you're not good enough. And the two biggest challenges I had in high school is one, and this is the big one. I was a teen parent. At 17 years old, I became a teen parent, and I'm not shy about talking about that. I mean, because that's reality. I mean, that's
Hmm.
reality within Indian country too. But one of the biggest things about that was that me and my daughter's mother made it a point to not be a statistic, to make sure that we weren't going to be some stereotype and some narrative that everyone was ready to give us. I mean, the moment it happened, it was like, that's it, he's done, they're done. They're going to end up working at McDonald's for the rest of their lives trying to raise this kid. And we weren't we just refused. We never let up, and we maintained our schedule in school, and we both graduated high school on time. In fact, my daughter's mother graduated with honors, and then directly from there we went on to college. And then we graduated from college. So we refused to be a part of that narrative. But the second the second challenge, and I think this is kind of like one of the important ones, because I'm pretty sure that there's a student out there that relates to it because I've heard it on this show, is that I used to have a teacher, and that teacher told me once, you know what, you're not going to amount to anything. And I don't even know why you're worrying about trying to graduate high school, because you're never going to get into a college. And I remember that like sticking to me and like being like, that was like my, I don't know, my self fire, like I always kept that there. So not only did I graduate high school on time, I went to college, graduated college, and then I went on to become a creative director for a national publication right after college. And so my high school actually called me back to speak to my high school. And I was able to, uh, you know, talk to all the entire high school. And that teacher was in the stands. And I was able to tell that story and say, I'm standing here as a college graduate, you know? So no matter what obstacles face you, man, just keep pushing through. I mean, you can achieve whatever you want. Don't let someone else's narrative control your life.
Wow, that's really powerful. We just continue to learn more and more about you, but the challenges that you talked about, I mean, those are real life things. I mean, people just expect
Hmm.
us to be, you know, everything just happened for us naturally. Sometimes we go through obstacles and barriers, and and it's how you go through those barriers is how you're going to be successful. And working with Kenrick over this last since August, I mean, it's you are right on time, right on it. I can't even believe that somebody would have those say something like that to you, a teacher. And again, we hear that a lot, right, Avery? That a lot of times there's misdoubt, and that's where that imposter syndrome comes in. So good for you. I'm proud of you. I'm excited. This is exciting.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it continued. It continued on in college too. From college, it was like, oh, you're native. Okay. Like I didn't go to like a native college, or I didn't go where there was, well, you know what? Actually, I went to a college where there was plenty of Native Americans in the community, but people just don't think of it. Like they don't think of it. They think we're all just past tense, right? Like we don't exist. In fact, so like when they found out that I was Native American, I got all those typical stereotypical questions, you live in a teepee? Did you live in a teepee? Is bison your main source of your diet? And I'm just like, bro, I came from like my people lived in mud huts and we were fishermen. So like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here to sort of break that barrier that people almost try to set you into. And yeah, it's interesting how this is a very similar trend that we've seen with all of our people that we brought in here. I don't think there's been one person that hasn't mentioned somewhat of imposter syndrome, or some sort of teacher who looked down on them, or people who look down on them for doing what they were doing. And now look where all these people are today. They're all on ANNY. They're all doing huge things in their careers. So, like Henrik said, like don't follow that narrative. Just do you. Listen to your family, well, the good ones, and then yeah, and yeah, just don't follow that narrative. Just do whatever you like, and that kind of brings up the point of so when you came to graphic design, when did you start learning that you were into graphic design? And was that in high school, middle school? When did you start getting into it?
I was in love with drawing ever since I was little. I always used to draw like all my favorite comic books, and but I wasn't like I was self-judging myself, right? Like I used to draw and be like, well, I don't think I'm like good enough to like ever work for a comic book, or or something like that, or become some type of artist. But it wasn't until 6th grade that I had a computer teacher, and she introduced me to Photoshop 5.0. I mean, and if you know Photoshop, that's old. uh, so Photoshop 5.0, she introduced that to me, and she said, "What if I gave you a program that you could manipulate imagery?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean I can manipulate imagery?" And I'm like in a magazine, like you could cut out people and put them places. And I remember vividly, like the first thing I did was I cut out Mark McGuire, because during that, I'm not trying to age myself, but during that time, Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa were doing like their big home run chase. And I remember cutting out Mark McGuire and like taking him out of a ballpark and putting him like in the city, hitting his home run. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing ever. Like I could do this. So like immediately in my head, I was like, I'm gonna make magazine covers. I'm gonna make CD cases, because at the time, we didn't have our phones. We actually had these things called CDs. So like I had CD cases. I was designing album covers and all this stuff, and just really started to enjoy it. Um, but it's funny though, because if I look back at what I was doing in middle school in comparison to what I was doing in college, it was like I was using every filter known to man. So like it was like everything was like full of neon, there was heavy drop shadows. It just looked, ridiculous. But it was fun though, and that's what sparked it. Um I like I mentioned before, I did have the challenge with that one teacher, but I have to give credit that along the way I did have like 3 major mentors that were all teachers. And what's actually funny about that, they were not your like, your English teacher. They were your like alternative teachers. You know, they were your computer teacher. They were your Future Farmers of America teacher. They were your, teacher of Native American culture. You know, they weren't your everyday math, English teachers. These were the outside group of teachers, and that kind of later defined what I did later on as an adult as well.
Yeah, we're often finding mentors in every different direction that you can actually, it could be the janitor, it could be, someone that shows kindness and kind of moves you in a direction. So,
Yeah.
how did you decide on a set career path? And do you even need a set career path?
You know, the answer is really no. That for me, the answer is no. I don't think you need to set a career path. I think what you need to do is set a goal. And then from that goal, you're going to realize that you will evolve. I mean, at least I hope you do. I hope you evolve because I mean, I've realized I've been a professional uh, for geez, for over 20 years. I've been a working professional, and in those years, I've been able to evolve from, I'm a graphic designer. That's what I am. I'm a graphic designer, and then I went into print publication and became a creative director for a national magazine. And from there, I ended up having to learn how to learn photography. So I learned photography, and then from photography, I learned multimedia. You know, I learned how to manipulate video. So like it's been a revolving door of growth. So I mean, yeah, and this is what I tell my daughters, it's good to know what you want, and it's good to create a pathway to get there. But whenever a door opens for you, even if you're like uncomfortable with it, walk through the door because you're going to end up gaining a skill that's going to set you up for life. And that's what it is for me. Like the idea that I just wanted to be a graphic designer. What I really wanted to do, I wanted to move to Hollywood and I wanted to create movie posters, and I wanted to, I wanted to create like banners and billboards and all that. That's what I wanted. But I've been able to do so much more because I've allowed the evolution to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wow, that's empowering because like you set out to do one thing and you end up going a whole entire different route, but still staying on track and picking up all these extra things that is going to become part of your toolbox, and it's going to help you set up for what can happen next.
Yep.
It's very
I
cool.
mean, if you told me 20 years ago that I would know how to do photography, I would know how to manipulate video, I would know how to basically do audio engineering, and on top of that, still maintain my skill set in graphic design, I'd be like, that seems like a lot of work. I don't think so, but that's really what it is. That's literally where I'm at today.
And it's an industry too that is always changing, especially for you, because you talked about the 2000s, sort of where it was like the graphic design was sort of in that movie or magazines part, and then it moved to social media in the 2000 after 2010, and then who knows what's going to be in 2030 or even next year. There's so many things that can open up in that field too, because our
Yeah.
technology is always changing. And look at your Photoshop. You started at 5, and then what number is it on now?
We're in the cloud. We're,
Yeah,
we're,
yeah.
we're in creative suite. We're in the cloud. Yeah, technology. I mean, technology moves so fast. I mean, we used to joke around that like the moment you got the latest version of Photoshop, it was going to change within the next year. So like nothing was ever going to stay the same. And then social media totally changed the game. When social media came, I had to learn. I was like, oh shoot, what is this thing called Facebook? Okay. And then how do you design in it? Which is funny because at the time I was trying to be ahead of it and be like, okay, I need to learn how to design inside this platform. Where look, today in 2021, I still have clients who tell me I don't know how to do that. So like I still have to, help people what I was trying to do when I first started. Oh, you?
Yeah.
I call Avery for everything. Avery, how do you do this?
One thing that had to basically what actually had to hurry my process in continuing what I do and how I can do it better and more efficiently was social media, because what came from social media then became uh the smartphone, and from the smartphone created the apps, and from the apps created, oh, guess what, anyone can design now on their phone. So like little by little my industry shrank, and so I had to be able to be still attractive enough in my work field to, still have work. And so I believe that's why the
Mhm.
evolution happened. I believe that's why like I had to, gain all those skill sets so that I could be relevant in my field, because, I have a 5-year old at home who can like get on the smartphone and create a whole, magazine cover like I used to do when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, all on the phone too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I can't even imagine. So when you went to school, it was probably stuff that was way different than what you learned or what you would be learning right now, right?
I mean the fundamentals of design is always the same. You're always going to learn about color. You're always going to learn about how to deal with contrasting images, and you're going to have to learn how to use your eyes. You got to be able to position what looks attractive to you, or what are you trying to get your point across. Like sometimes as a designer I got to be able to create a call to action without even using words. So
Mm.
you learn those basics in school. They teach you the tricks of the trade, and what's really funny about that is that when I was in college I had professors who were from the 60s and 70s, and they were talking about marketing and how they were working in the newspapers, and how they would have to create their all their graphic design by hand. They would have to cut things out and put them together, and they created their collages by hand, and then they had to take a photo of them, and we were just like totally making fun of them. They were the boomers of our time, and we were just like, really? And now I'm sitting here 20 years later and I'm that guy. So like I'm talking about what I do, and then I have people like yourself, Avery, and you're like, yeah, I do it online, I do it on the phone. you know so yeah, times always change. It's funny.
And while we're on the topic of you going to school too, why did you decide to go to the Art Institute of California, San Diego, and how was it there?
Well, technically I didn't really choose it. I knew, you know when I was getting out of high school and I was about to graduate, I knew that I wanted to go to an art school. But I also knew I wanted to go to a small school so that my education could be very intimate. I kind of had a feeling that if I went to a big university, I would probably get stuck with like some like claustrophobia or something. Like I would just get like anxiety about it. So when I was looking for schools, I found a school that was actually in La Jolla, California, and it was a private art school at the time. And so I was like, that's where I need to go. I want to go. First of all, La Jolla, I mean, the beaches are beautiful, right? So I was like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds wonderful. So I applied, and I had one of my teachers help me along the way to, take me to the school. We visited the school. I would talk to the dean. I shared with him, all my artwork at the time, which I look at it now, I'm embarrassed, like whatever I was showing him. So I was able to show him my work, and he said, yeah, how about you just fill out your submission forms and let's see what's going on. And so we did that, and I got accepted to this private art school. Unfortunately, it was so popular, that school, that when the Art Institute of California decided to build their school in San Diego, they bought my school. So yeah, so I was like in year 2. I was in year 2, and they bought us, and we had to move to downtown San Diego, and we had to go to the Art Institute of California, San Diego, which was funny because they ended up changing the semesters. They changed them to like 12 weeks, and we were the 10 weekers. Ours were 10 weeks long. And so they grandfathered us in, and so they all always referred to us as the 10 weekers. So we were like the old heads of the school. But it was great. I ended up graduating from there, and I was able to create a lot of good networking from it. So even though like I kind of felt like the Art Institute, it seemed like a big box, you know, for-profit school, and you were just kind of like, you felt kind of cringy about it. But ultimately, I'm thankful that that school was actually really good, because they just opened it. They wanted their reputation to be good and strong, so they hired great teachers from Los Angeles. And so I learned a lot from that experience.
So did you have pressure to like get a degree outside of graphic design?
I think I've put myself in that, with that pressure. I think as I got older, I kept telling myself, is my art degree, worth a grain of salt? How do people perceive me? As like, I'm an art guy. You say, oh yeah, I have a bachelor's degree, and they're like, in what? And you're like, art, and they're like, you know. So I kind of had that myself. But as I got older and became more confident in my field, I've been able to be happy where I'm at. And I always encourage anybody, because I even see it in my daughters, and I see it in a lot of my little cousins. They have that in them to be an artist, and I'm never shy about recommending those type of schools, because whatever amplifies your excitement, professionally, then do it. Why build pressure on, like, no, 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 I have to go to a university. You don't have to do anything except do what makes you happy. So, and if art school can make you happy, or if going to going to a school to learn how to build an air conditioner, if that makes you happy, great. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about what's going to fulfill your life, and, and put dinner on the table, right? So, yeah, I encourage it all the way.
Yeah, and I think having both, doing your passion and also doing a job where they say you never have to work. You're always constantly, driving to do something more excellent. So it's
Right,
awesome.
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how you said just do anything that makes you happy, because there's a lot of people who will just do things for sometimes, I mean, they say to put their food on the table, but they're still not doing anything that they want that makes them happy. And so even when it comes to money, you still, I think you really want to get a job that still makes you happy and make sure it's something you're interested in. And I know, Kenrick, you've worked. I've heard about all the different jobs that you've done, but what led you to become a teacher for a period of your professional career?
By the time I became a teacher, for the state of Arizona, um, I was a graphic design professional for about probably 12, 14 years. And I just basically had burnout. I got burnout. I ended up working for the Department of Defense, and I worked for them for over a decade. And I loved the work. The work was so good and so rewarding. I was able to, um, create visual information that would go directly to congressional leaders. I was able to participate in, developing, like, showcasing material that was directly going out to theater, which is, going out to war. So, I mean, very like high level rewarding work. But after doing it for 10 years, it really kind of started to feel like all I was doing was making donuts every day. I'd wake up 5 o'clock in the morning, get myself to the base, and make those donuts every day, and then clock out at 5 o'clock, drive myself back home. So, like, it became very repetitive. And so I just got burnt out. And so at the time, um, I was transitioning into nonprofit work. I was able to successfully build two nonprofits back home. My first nonprofit was a media nonprofit, where we were able to build our first FM radio station on our reservation. So I was really happy about that. And then my second nonprofit, I worked with a local MMA fighter from Yuma, Arizona. He was a local champion, and we ended up creating a anti-bullying nonprofit gym. So we would basically bring in the victims of bullying and the bully, and we would rehab them both together.
Whoa,
Yeah, it was quite the
yeah,
experience.
that's super
And
interesting.
we would do that through all the arts that you can think of. We did it through boxing, we did it through wrestling, we did it through judo, jujitsu, and we even did it through Spartan obstacle course racing. I mean, we it's such a beautiful program. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the program had to stop. But we hope to get that rebuilt again in Arizona. But through that nonprofit work, and the fact that also during that time, I decided to become the high school football coach of my high school for a year. It just seemed like education was like somewhere natural I could go. And so I actually had someone reach out to me and said, "Hey, we have this cool nonprofit program called Playworks. Would you be interested in becoming a coach? Because you've been a coach, you've been involved in all these athletics and all these different things." And I was like, "Sure. Okay. What does that mean?" And so what I ended up doing was I ended up going to a school, actually, a school district, and I would go to 4 schools, and I created a youth leadership program to defend bullying in recess. So I had all these little junior coaches, and they would create all these fun activities during recess so that all the kids would be too busy doing things together so that they wouldn't be fighting with each other. And so I just started loving that work, and I love that district. And then the superintendent just came to me one day and said, "Hey, you have a bachelor's degree, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Did you ever think of getting certified as a teacher?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Well, what about doing physical education? Would you be interested in doing physical education? Because we really need somebody, and we would love to have you." And so I went for it, and I got it. And that was the most rewarding 2 years I spent. I was a physical education teacher for 2 years, and for the first year of being a PE teacher, I actually won Teacher of the Year for my county. And what was interesting about that, and I was kind of talking about it earlier, what was rewarding to win Teacher of the Year and not being what you think as the quote unquote teacher. I wasn't teaching math. I wasn't teaching science. I wasn't teaching English. I was teaching PE. And then I realized the 3 biggest mentors I had growing up were those type of teachers, those special alternative teachers. And I ended up becoming one without even thinking about it. So yeah, they were, that's basically the short of like how I became a teacher. And there's days that I miss it, but I got an email one day, and I was asked a question, "Hey, would you be willing to answer the call and come to Washington, D.C. and do some work for Indian country?" And so I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I got pulled back into what I do naturally. So
Right. We usually go with our, something about our instincts of how to, like, I always wanted to be a teacher. I'm not a teacher though, but I'm in education. So somehow, some way you fit yourself in where you're most passionate for. And so that kind of takes us to like describing your work at the National Congress of American Indians.
yeah.
What is your work?
Yes, I'm very blessed that I have the opportunity to work for the National Congress of American Indians. It's one of the oldest and largest nonprofits out there advocating for Indian country. And I'm the multimedia resource and development specialist. I'm in charge of the front facing visual vehicle of the organization. So things that you see from social media, from our conferences, and how we communicate to Indian country, and even outside of Indian country. I play a part in that. From design, from audio, visual, photography, and now because of COVID and this virtual world, I'm also like in charge of like creating these virtual environments that we see. So it's been a really great opportunity.
Yeah, I
One
can't imagine. No, keep going.
No, one thing I wanted to point out, when I was a teacher, when I was doing PE, it was something where you guys mentioned about your paths and the pressure of like maybe being something else, in the pursuit of what you want to do. Everything I've ever noticed is that as a graphic designer, like if I'm in a room with a whole bunch of like creatives, like say like when I was in print publication and I was doing magazines, I used to have writers and marketing people who would be envious of like I was designing all day. They're like,
Mhm.
"God, we really want to do what you do." And I was like, "Well, you should have took a left and you should have done that." But they didn't. And and then when I became a PE teacher, I got that same feeling. Like I would have like uh first grade teachers, or second grade teachers coming to me and be like, God, it must be fun to just do PE all day. And I'm like, well, you could have took a left, and you could have chose that box, but you didn't choose it. And that's always been like the fun joke of my life is like, I work hard, but I also work in a fun field where it doesn't seem too hard at the end of the day. So yes, it's important to choose your path.
Yeah, it kind of sounds rewarding. I mean, everything that you've done up until now is pretty rewarding. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's it's rewarding in so many different ways. I would have never thought I would find a path to feel rewarded to help my tribe as a graphic designer. Like, what was
Mhm.
I going to do to help my tribe, as a designer? But I have been able to do that. I have
Mhm.
been able to um, create pathways to help my tribe. Maybe that is in like, helping them in their communication, or now I work for the National Congress of American Indians. So I'm not only helping my tribe, but I'm helping all the tribes of Indian country. So um, yeah, you always find a way.
Mhm. And that reminds me too when you were talking about your that's what I forgot I was gonna say. But yeah, and and it sounds like you've done so much, and I know you've done. It's so interesting to hear about the bullying program you did. I wouldn't even thought of that being a good solution. And so once COVID's over, I'd like to look back into that and see how it's going because that's really cool. That did you create that?
I was a co-creator.
Uh-huh.
It would be really, really silly of me to try to take all the credit for that. My co-founder was Carlos Flores, and he's a former MMA champion from Yuma, Arizona, and he's just a beloved member of the community. Um, and he came to me, and it came to me like in that first way, like, oh, you're a graphic designer, like, hey, bro, hey, you can design me a flyer, like that's how it started.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And then it turned into a conversation, like, what are you trying to do? And he was like, I don't know, I want to help the kids, man. I really want to help them in some way, and I just don't know how. And I'm like, start a nonprofit. And he's like, what do you mean? What's the non? Like he wasn't like really sure, like, how do we go about it? And I was like, look, let's put it together, let's write it out, and let's make it happen. And that is really something that's been very rewarding for me. All the kids, we were helping so many kids in the Yuma County community that I. It's really sad that right now I can't say we're still doing it. It's something that I would definitely want to revisit. Unfortunately, I'm in DC, so it's one of those things. If there's ever something that's ever going to take me back to Arizona, that might be one of them.
Mhm. And alongside that work too, what are some of your other projects or hobbies that you're doing right now?
Man, I have a
Maybe one or two if you have a lot.
I know, right? Um, I have an ongoing slogan that I'm a Native American of all trades, but I'm a master of none. Um, right now, one of my biggest passion projects is that I have a podcast. It's called the Wrong Indian Podcast, and I'm not the only one on it. It originally started with my co-host Brittany Schulman, and we have expanded, and we now have two more hosts. So we're a group of four, so we're very sacred. And what so what we do is, our whole thing about the podcast is that we're experienced in so many things, but we're really not the expert. So what we do is we interview the experts. So we bring them on, kind of like this show right here. We bring on the experts and we try to educate as much as we can. And we really try to elevate as many indigenous, creatives that we can. That may be from uh the coffee roaster, the brewmaster, the beater, the future rapper, musician, or it could be a political figure. I mean, one thing that I've learned from the podcast is that sometimes we get stuck in certain narratives, right? As native people, we're either tribal lawyers, we work for IHS, or we work at the casino, or we work at our tribal admin building, right? Like we get stuck in these tropes. And so with our podcast, we're able to kind of break through that and be like, no, there's people that are in fashion. There's people that, like I said, who would have thought, there's a Native American out there who makes beer, and they're good at it, they make coffee, they make music, they bead, you name it. I mean, shoot, we even have someone who works for NASA and, was a part of the
Hmm.
Mars program. How amazing is that? I mean, that I think what you guys do, what we do, and what more people need to do is continue to like open that door and show people, look, this is what Indian country is. It's not what you just think it is. We're not the wooden Indian holding the cigarettes or holding the cigars. We're way
Hmm.
more than that. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, because we have so many youth that are watching this show, and for them to like put themselves in a box would totally like suffocate them, seems like.
Yeah.
And what you've done is just like, hey, I'm opening this lid and I'm going to get out and I'm going to create some stuff. And I'm not going to, there's not going to be like, there's going to be zigzags and, all different types of shapes and sizes of how I'm going to become. And you're leaving a legacy for not just your children, but for others, especially with the work that you do at the national level and with your podcast and, your nonprofits that, you've helped keep up. And hopefully those, because that, like Avery said, that is amazing. To have an anti-bullying type of program. I've never really heard of such a thing. It's unique in itself and bringing the two together. So yeah, I like it. It's cool.
Thank
Hmm.
you.
And one thing I'm thinking about right now is, so like we're talking about natives going to all these careers. So if another native youth was thinking about going into graphic design, what would be the biggest tip you have for that student?
You know, I was actually honored to speak at our annual convention that we had for the National Congress of American Indians, and they put me on a panel uh, to talk about communication. And one thing I shared with them, that when it comes to art or when it comes to communicating, we as Indigenous people, we have been doing this since time immemorial. It is literally built in us from the first, cave painting to present day. It's built in us to be artists. And if that means you're a graphic designer, or if that means you're a musician, or if that means you like to do street art, no matter what, that's in you. And so I always try to encourage tribal youth to, if you feel like that's what you want to do, then be empowered to do that. And don't think it's an easy way out, because I've heard that too along my career, that oh, you want to be an artist, okay, that seems like the easy thing to do. Well, it's not. It's not easy, because if it was easy, literally everyone would be doing it, and be doing it
Hmm.
professionally. You know what I mean? So I always tell native youth to, if that's what you want to do, then pursue it, and do everything possible to pursue it, and do your best to continue to break through those stereotypes and tropes that tell you you can't.
All right. I'm so excited. I hope my nephew, Ivan Real, is listening to this tonight, because he is always drawing and he has art. I mean, ever since he was a little kid, and to know a direction could be had in art, graphic designing, and what, like Avery said, what does 2030 look like for him? After he graduates from college and moves on into different directions. So
Right.
anything can happen, from that cutout in the 60s to Kenrick's 5.0 to, today and what the future looks like, which brings us to what are your future plans and goals?
Just to keep doing what I'm doing, for me, like my biggest motivators now is what legacy I can maintain, so that my daughters are proud of what I do. Um, and then at the end of the day, I need to be happy in what I'm doing. I like to, give myself some false confidence maybe in the idea that, I'm too old to not be happy. So, I want to be in a stage of my life that I'm doing something that actually motivates me to do it every day. And, I'm really happy to say that right now I am. I'm in a space where I feel like not only am I helping at a national level, but I'm doing the best I can to even help back home. So, I mean, those are really my goals, just to maintain that. I want to be able to uh, do the good work here in Washington and then be able to go home saying, I did what I needed to do and now I'm ready to settle here back home. When I took the job and moved to Washington D.C., one thing my elders told me were soak it all up, soak it all up, learn everything that you can, because when you come home, your work won't be done. When you come home, then you have to share that. You got to share what you learn. And I think that's what we all need to do, as indigenous people, no matter what we're doing, what field we're in. I don't care if you're a line cook. Learn everything about that. And then one day you're going to share that with someone who needs to learn it. So, yeah.
True story. And math matters no matter where you go. It was
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah,
I tried to avoid it like the plague, but I can't.
I know. And yeah, like our future, I think we don't really have a set pathway too. I think it's important what you said because we have so many different doors that could open up at any time and we just don't know that. And so I think it's best to at the same time plan your pathway, but also just don't plan it towards that one door, like you said.
Yeah. And don't settle for just being comfortable either.
Hmm.
I think, in my over 20 years of doing this stuff, it's like there were moments where I said, okay, I'm comfortable. I can settle. I can just do this for the rest of my life. But then I realized all my motivations were gone and my creativity was completely going dark, So I always try to encourage anybody, just don't settle. Never settle and always know that you are a rock star. I think sometimes we forget that. Like sometimes we forget that, like, you know what? No, I'm actually good at what I do. Avery, you're good at what you do. Dina, you're great at what you do. And you got to be able to tell yourself that, because sometimes you get stuck in the whole like, well, I'm getting by. I got a paycheck. Things are nice. But it's like, no, you can go beyond that. Avery, you want to start a podcast? Start it. You're going to be awesome at it.
Hmm.
Dina, if you ever really want to become a teacher, pursue it. Do it. One day I might wake up and say, I want to own my own business. I'll do it. Actually, at one point, I wanted to open a coffee shop with my wife, and we actually did. We opened a pop-up shop in Arizona, but unfortunately, I took my job in DC, so we had to close it. But I mean, I always try to say, like, if you get bored in something, do something else. Don't
yeah,
get
I
stuck.
think that's so cool, Kenrick. I'm just thinking about my own, like how many doors have opened just because I just was there. And I
Right.
could have
Yeah.
easily got scared and said, no, I'm just gonna stay comfortable. But instead things happen and you just kind of go through that door, not even knowing what's on the other side, and just doing it without fear is
That's it.
really kind of important. And you get a little comfortable, you think, oh, I'm going to retire from this Nevada Department of Education in 5 years, and then what?
Right.
Anything else
Hmm.
can happen between it. So yeah, thanks. And I hope that those who are listening to Kenrick can actually will hear that, because it's important for you to not be scared. Avery, we're
Hmm.
talking. You
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I know it's tough because yeah, it's scary to open those new doors because it's almost like you're pressured. And this whole conversation, I feel like, has been almost centered around opening new doors and taking new pathways. And I think it can be scary to go around those new pathways or open those new doors, but you have no idea what's on the other side. You have no idea what's going to come in the next year. Like for your nephew, 2030, we have no idea what's going to come out. So just follow what you like, follow your pathway to your career, and Yeah, I think that brings me to the top of our conversation. And I just want to ask you, Kenrick, what's one piece of advice that you have for all Native youth as a whole?
The one biggest thing, and I try to tell this to my daughters all the time, and we talk a lot about it in our podcast too, is that when it comes to Indian country, we're not a monolith. You know, we're not just one thing. We are a beautiful tapestry of so many shapes, sizes, cultures. So don't feel that you're not enough. Don't feel that you need to fit into this like idea of what it is to be indigenous or what it is to be Native American. Cause I think a lot of times what I'm especially what I'm seeing now and like with like the TikTok world and we're seeing a lot of reconnecting natives and from urban centers, and they feel inadequate. They feel like they don't matter, and they do matter. And it's just that sometimes we get stuck in that idea, that romantic idea of who we should be. But we're so many things. What I always like to point out in my podcast when we have guests, I always like to show the boxes of everybody, and I always like to point out, look how different we all look. I mean, right now, if you looked at me, Avery, Dina, we don't look the same. I mean, we're not like related, but we are who we are. We're indigenous people. We're not a monolith. We're not just this one thing that the government wants to tell us we are, or that, the majority wants to tell us we are. You are who you are. So blaze that trail, you know? You might be that young kid from Nevada that, hey, I just want to be a skateboarder. Then do that. you know Go end up being a professional skateboarder for Vans or something. You don't have to, like I always say, and I'm not putting down anybody, but I always try to tell people, you don't have to go work at the casino. You don't have to go work for the admin building for your tribe. You don't. I understand that sometimes that's all we can do, and there's nothing wrong in doing that, and I applaud you that if you do that, but that's not all we are. We can be anything we want to be. Anything. I mean, look who we have who's gonna be the Secretary of Interior. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that we would have our own representing ourselves? And that's gonna become reality. Now I can show my daughters, look, that's someone who looks like you and that's Native American like you, and they're like the highest ranking person that you can think of. You know, One day we could have a Native American president. Who knows? We literally could have anything we want. It's just a matter of walking through that door and doing it. That's it.
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you. Oh, I hope our kids heard that because you can be anything that you set your mind to. All of us, even Avery, we have like faced whatever it was that was the barrier and moved it aside, and we're still doing it to this day. Um, and with Avery moving on to UCLA, it's going to be amazing for him. And Kenrick, and your future goals and aspirations, we're excited to see what you do next, because I just can't imagine in 2030 you're still just going to be sitting there. It's going to be something amazing and awesome, and I hope that our students are going to be able to follow you and watch you, because we'll be like, yeah, we had Kenrick on our show at one time. And it's
Like I always say, like, hey, I played in the same fields and I swam in the same ditches. So, we're all the same people. And Avery, I'm proud of you too. I mean, I've learned a lot about you in this program. You always share your story about how you were like, the oldest senior for a long period of time, right? Because you
Mhm.
stayed in college a little longer than you anticipated. But that's what you needed though, for your
Mhm.
own growth. That is what you needed. And if you would have accepted society saying like, bro, come on, you've been at college how long? You know, yeah, that could have
Uh,
completely derailed your success. but you stuck through it, and that's what a lot of indigenous kids need to know, that, nothing's easy, and nothing's going to be a perfect formula either. College isn't going to always be 4 years, or, if you're going to junior college, it's not going to be 2 years. Maybe you have to, take a little longer, instead of running, maybe you have to start walking, and I kind of feel like that's what you did, Avery. Like you just needed to walk a little longer, and now you figured it out. And look at you. Now you're going to UCLA. I'm jealous. That's a beautiful campus.
Yep, I was never a runner anyway.
There you go.
Never much of a runner.
There you go. Exactly.
So it makes sense.
Yep.
Well, yeah, thank you, Kenrick, for this amazing show that we've had. We've learned so much, and I know our guests have learned a ton, and we're just thankful to have you with our show. We're thankful to see all the things you're going to do in the future. We know you're going to do more huge things, because, yeah, like we keep saying, there's just endless possibilities, and might as well just take the time and do what we can while we're here.
Absolutely.
Did you have anything to close off with, Dina?
Just pleased to have another creative native with us tonight, and just thinking about all those kids who are thinking about what to do with their future, and to know that you don't have to be in that box. You can open the lid and do it. The world is your, what they say, your oyster.
Your oyster?
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I like to think that right now I've kind of lived full circle, and I'm really happy about that. And I think that, indigenous kids out there who are listening, future college students, understand that everything in your life will lead you somewhere that you need to be. When I was growing up, I never thought that I was going to be able to say, I've traveled the world. I've been able to successfully travel the world, and and that was because of not just work, but through the doors I've opened and the networks I've created. I can say that I've been to Mexico, like not just the border, because I lived near it, but I actually went into Mexico. I've been into Canada. I've been to Australia. I've been to New Zealand. I've been to Peru. I've been able to see these indigenous places. And I would have never thought as a kid that I was going to be able to do that. I never thought I was going to be able to fly and, like take off at 7 a.m. and land somewhere and it's 7 a.m. You know what I mean? So, I mean, your opportunities are endless. You just have to not let anything block your way.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing your challenges. That's important, that our kids hear that just because there's challenges, that it can be overcome. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not going to point out that my daughter's probably Avery's age.
Thanks again, Kenrick, for being here tonight. We've had a great episode, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week. So see you later, everybody. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Good night.